Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Phil and welcome to Grounded, the series which looks at airlines of yesteryear. This episode will take a look at the grand sounding Ambassador Airways. Ambassador Airways was one of a myriad of charter airlines launched between the mid-1980s and late 1990s. It was founded in 1992 as the in-house charter airline for Best Travel Limited. In the wake of the collapse of Air Europe the year previously, the independent travel companies found themselves struggling to find capacity with existing charter airlines, as those seats were increasingly going to their respective travel companies. Best Travel seized the opportunity with this gap in the market and launched Ambassador Airways. At first, Ambassador didn't have its own air operator certificate and had Britannia Airways operate some 737-200s on their behalf. But in April 1993 they were finally granted their own licence. Two Boeing 757-200s were brought in on lease from Caledonian Airways and the airline started to prosper. The airline operated flights to Greece and Cyprus but also started to move into the competitive Mediterranean market. Growth was very much on the cards, having struck a deal with third-party companies such as Goldcrest and Inspirations, two names that will come up in future episodes of Grounded. Flights from the UK operated from London Gatwick, Manchester, Newcastle, and in 1994 Ambassador more than doubled their fleet with the introduction of 6 more aircraft. 2 more 757s arrived along with 2 737-200s and finally 2 Airbus A320s. The Boeing fleet would wear the fairly smart looking Ambassador livery, however the A320s would be in a white livery with Ambassador titles and tail logo. These were leased in from a small Greek company known as Southeast European Airways, or SEEA. Things were certainly on the up and up for Ambassador, however the UK economy was still struggling in the early to mid-90s. The first and hardest hit were of course the small independent tour operators, which had been the primary business for some of the independent carriers. However, Ambassador plodded on until it suddenly found itself without its biggest external customers, Inspirations and Goldcrest. Inspirations was a growing tour operator and the parent of Goldcrest Aviation, who were primarily a seat broker, but they were also involved in some tour operations. Unfortunately for Ambassador, it was in 1994 that Inspirations revealed it was acquiring Caledonian Airways, a charter airline which British Airways had been keen to offload. Caledonian hadn't been losing money. It was just that BA wanted to offload it because it needed to streamline following the early 90s recession. Caledonian is of course an episode all for itself, but needless to say it was a fair-sized airline with a mixed fleet of long and short-haul aircraft, and its acquisition sent shockwaves through Ambassador and Best Travel. With the considerable damage done due to losing these two big customers, Ambassador doggedly limped on, trying to win new business from other small independent tour companies, but it was not to be. Best Travel themselves were struggling. They had taken some pretty big hits, and despite their best efforts, they entered administration on the 28th of November 1994. With the parent company in such financial trouble, Ambassador found its fleet grounded, impounded by bloodthirsty lawyers who wanted to hold those aircraft to ransom on behalf of the creditors of Best Travel. That sadly is how the game was played, and still is played. With the fleet impounded, there was no option for Ambassador other than to cease operations with immediate effect. So what went wrong? The obvious answer is that the parent company went bust, but as always there is a bit more to the story. In the early 1990s, Europe and especially the UK were suffering a recession. Add to that the Gulf War had kicked off, leading to an increase in oil prices and the resultant spike in fuel costs. The combination of these had put the nail in the coffin for quite a few carriers at the time, the most prominent of which was of course Air Europe, and to a lesser extent Dan Air London. Ambassador had obviously come around after this had happened, jumping in the gap left behind in Air Europe's wake. It was growing rather well, with its fleet tripling in size in just under 2 years, and even despite losing the contracts for Inspirations and Goldcrest, it looked like it could keep going. The UK and most of Europe do not have a bankruptcy protection system in place. In the US, an airline can enter Chapter 11, which, while allowing the company to restructure, crucially allows the airline to continue operating. On this side of the pond, it's not like that. Once an airline enters administration, its aircraft are impounded, then things spiral out of control pretty much instantly, but I digress. Ambassador Airways was indeed a company in its own right, and as far as my research has led me to believe, wasn't in much debt, but with its parent company entering administration, it found itself cut off from extra finance that could help support it through the quiet winter season. Some of you may be asking, well, why wasn't Ambassador sold on? And the simple answer is, it couldn't be sold as a going concern. As soon as those aircraft were impounded, the whole operation falls apart. Airports, ground handlers, caterers and the like don't want to deal with an airline if they think there's a chance they won't get paid. It doesn't even matter if the airline was profitable or not. There is no provision for an airline to be allowed to operate in the interim until a buyer can be sourced, and that's assuming they would have been able to find one quickly enough. If you're wondering what happened to Inspirations and Caledonian Airways, they were themselves soon took over by the Carlson Group, who in early 2000 merged their leisure division with that of Thomas Cook. Inspirations became just a name and eventually a shell company, while Caledonian was merged into Flying Colours, with the new combined airline going under the name of JMC Air Services, or as I still call it, JM who? It's not over yet though. Following the demise of Ambassador, Goldcrest and Caledonian eventually formed a new airline called Peach Air. No, not that one. There we go, that's the one. And they most certainly are an episode for another day. Until next time, thank you for watching. Please comment and let me know what you thought of this episode, along with suggestions as to what I should change for future episodes of Grounded. Maybe even subscribe for more future episodes, as well as regular plane videos and other bits I've got in the pipeline.